Good day, good people. My name is Brad King, and this is the Downtown Writers Jam video podcast, which is part of the Solid Listen Podcast Network. Max the Dog and I are coming to you from deep inside the Jam bunker, and I'm very excited because while I don't have this coffee mug during the interview, I do have it during the intro. If you watch Ted Lasso, this is my favorite new coffee cup. You're going to be seeing this on the show a lot, I'm sure. Super happy to have Robyn Harding on the show today. Her book, The Perfect Family, is out right now. She's charming. She's the author of several books, including the international bestseller, The Party, which was shortlisted for the Arthur Ellis Award for Best Canadian Crime Novel. So what you're finding out is she is part of this Canadian thriller group that I've been interviewing over the last 2 years. And the #1 bestseller, The Swap. She has written films, right? Executive produced the independent film, The Steps, and it has premiered at several big film festivals. And her novel, The Perfect Family, which is the one out now, just came out last month. She's up in Vancouver with her family and 2 cute dogs. So, we had some conversation about dogs that you will not be hearing today. But if you're a dog person and a writer, and apparently from Canada, you're like one of my favorite guests to have on the show. So before we get to her, just a little bit of business stuff you already know is coming if you listen to the program. So the Jam proper, our hour-long program, comes out every Wednesday. And these video podcasts come out about Monday and Friday. Couple things you can do to help us out. Tell 1 or 2 friends about us. As we grow, the biggest way to do that is for you to tell your friends, hey, check this thing out. The other thing you can do is leave us a review. If you listen to Apple Podcasts, it's great if you can leave it there. You can leave a written review and a star. You can go over to the Facebook page. There's a review section there. That's super helpful. Or you can go to thewritersjam.com and leave us a testimonial through the contact page. At the site, you can check out these video podcasts that you're seeing. You can check out our book reviews. You can click on the bookshop link, buy books directly, sign up for a monthly newsletter, all of that kind of stuff. And you can support the entire Solid Listen network by clicking on the Patreon button. And for just a couple bucks a month, you get commercial-free episodes and all kinds of bonus content from everybody on the network. So this is a fun conversation. Thrillers have apparently become a genre of books that I did not know that I like to read, and I read them all the time now. So it is always lovely to talk to writers that do that. I'm particularly interested in like how that happens over the course of a pandemic, because I frankly have just been paralyzed with writing. Like, it's been so difficult. So to go into that kind of world, like I've also stopped watching any kind of like horror, sad, scary, jump out, any of that stuff. But apparently I can read those books, and apparently I love talking to those people. So I think you're going to enjoy today's conversation. Robyn is fantastic, and it's always fun too. If you listen to the show, I've talked to several folks that have toggled back and forth between film and novel writing, and that shit both impresses me and is fascinating for the way in which each informs each other. And it sort of makes me wish that I would have gotten a film degree when I was an undergraduate, but that's for a different life in the multiverse. For now, thank you for stopping by the bunker to spend some time with Max and I. Hope your day is going well and that you're taking care of yourself and all of that kind of stuff. Get outside, walk, get vaccinated, stay hydrated, like all of those things. And before you do any of that, well, get vaccinated first, and then sit back and enjoy my conversation with Robyn Harding.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's a different world, because my book just came out last week, and I've never been this busy during a launch because it's all online. I had like 5 things a day last week. It's exhausting, but great that you can do that much to get your book out in the world.
Yeah, it's interesting to me to see, like, when all this goes away, I mean, knock wood, that the writing community has really come together in this like amazing way, and that I can now talk to people all over the world that I never would have before in a more traditional time. And I think it's really healthy for writers. I don't know if it's healthy for the business of writing, but it's been nice to connect to writers all over the place.
Yeah, no, I think that, I mean, I feel like that will stay. It's so it's so nice for writers. It's so affordable for, like I've been going to festivals and speaking at libraries, but because I'm not actually going anywhere, it makes it so much easier to connect with readers from anywhere. So it's been, I think that's one of the positives, if there can be a positive in this whole mess. But
I know I always couch it with like, this is terrible and there's nothing good about this.
Yeah.
So I'm interested. I've interviewed several people that came to fiction writing through film. Which one did you do first? Were you doing novels before you did film stuff?
Yes. So I did novels. I did like humorous women's fiction, chick lit, it was called in the day, back in the Bridget Jones's Diary era. And Confessions of a Shopaholic, all those were all the rage. And I wrote 6 kind of humorous novels. One was a YA, one was a comedic memoir about the environment. And I published my first one in 2004. And then 6 books later, probably 7, 8 years, I guess. And then I took a break, went into screenwriting. What a hard business. Oh my God. So hard, like I did get a film made, a Canadian indie film, and it was a really cool experience and I learned a ton. But one of the things I learned was that I really love the world of novel writing and publishing and, the autonomy of owning your own words. And so then I went back into writing in 2017 with my first domestic suspense, The Party. And I had never written anything that dark before. Even my film was sort of a dramedy. And so I decided that's what I was reading. I was reading all these thrillers and like really enjoying the dark side. And so I thought, I don't know, can I write it? It might be so depressing and creepy, but I just pushed through and I did it. And now I'm like totally into it. I just like the darker, the better.
You're a murder podcast person now.
I am. I know. It's like, can't get enough. What is wrong with me? But
the reason I ask is because as a writer, it's so I've talked to people that were feature film writers and they talked about the comfort of the structure, right? Like a film, you have this many minutes and things have to happen. And so when they transitioned into novel writing, they were like, oh, I understand structure because I've been in this structure of film. And when you're a novelist, right? Like the first few you write, you're like, what's happening? Like you don't generally come with that knowledge of structure.
Yeah. So my first 6 books that I wrote that were humorous, I just winged it. I didn't know anything about structure. And they do say that story is kind of inherent in us. So it worked. And I just was like, la, 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 and hitting the beats whenever they landed. And now after screenwriting, it's really helpful for thrillers because I do think structure and pacing is so important, right? Yes. Like you got to keep people on their toes and engaged in things. So I always do use screenplay structure now for my thrillers, at least the big plot points, and make sure that I'm hitting things at the right moment in the book. There's actually, you've probably heard of Save the Cat.
No.
Have you heard of that book?
No.
Blake Snyder. So it's a screenwriting Bible that everybody uses, and it lays out the structure of a screenplay. And someone has produced a book called Save the Cat Writes a Novel. And it basically just takes novel length, 80,000 words, and puts it, here's what should be happening. And it can be a little restrictive. Like I don't like to go beat by beat because then I feel like, where's my creativity coming in? But those big plot points, I definitely try to hit them on at the right times. Yeah.
Yeah. And like artists will tell you, constraints are where creativity comes from. Like at a certain point, you do have to say, well, this is what's happening. And then you can break it, but you have to know what you're breaking, particularly in these kinds of thriller, like things where you are walking a reader through. There is a built-in expectation that they have about what's going to happen.
Exactly. And they feel dissatisfied if you don't give them what they're expecting
Yeah.
at the right time. So yeah, I know at first I was like, this structure is so constraining, but it's like, that's our inherent knowledge of story, right?
Yeah.
Like people have been telling stories with that structure since like caveman days. So that's what we all want, to be
Yeah.
satisfied.
And it's so
Being.
strange just because, I always say on the program, like to be a doctor, there's a path. To be a lawyer, there's a path. It's not easy, but do X, do Y, do Z, get board certified. And with writing, it's sort of like, like, am I a writer? I'm like, I don't know. Like, are you?
I know. And most careers have a trajectory like this.
Yeah.
And my career as a writer has been like this,
Yeah.
this, and then this. And, it's like, yeah, it's crazy. And I would not have, kind of when I sold my first book to, like, I'm from a small town in Canada. I live in the city now, but I grew up in this very small town, and I sold my first 2-book deal to Random House.
Wow.
For good money. Like this was 2003. And I'm just like, I've made it. I am so great. I've made it. I'm like, little did I know that I was going to go like from here to here to here to here. I mean, it's just been a long, long road, but I'm still really grateful that I have been able to do this for a living for 17 years or something. So,
well, and it's also, I think, we're in the same neighborhood of age, like the trajectory of even the career, like, in the 70s and 80s, you would have an agent and they like, you would be like, book companies didn't expect you to sell 1 million copies your first book. Like they sort of built your career over time. And that is not the case these days.
Well, no, do you have your shot? I mean, been with Simon & Schuster for 5 books.
Wow,
and,
that's great.
Yeah, I know. And I know I know a few writers. Chevy Stevens is one, if you're going to talk to her, who has had like that dream career, in my opinion, where she's had the same editor, the same publisher the whole way through, and they're just behind her. And, not many people have that. Like I was on a library visit with Laura Dave yesterday, and she just has the #1 New York Times bestselling novel, Reese Witherspoon book club. And I said, congrats on all your huge success. And she was so like humble. And she goes, thank you. It's just weird. I've had so many books that went nowhere. Like just so many books. And then suddenly one book does this. And she was just really grounded about it, So I think if it happened to someone earlier in their career, it would be different. But for most of us, like whatever happens to us now is just like, awesome, but we've been through the ringer, and who knows what will happen next, right? So,
well, and the other thing I talk about on the show all the time is like, I think it's impossible to be a writer if you're the coolest person in the room. I think you have to feel detached and sort of outside of things, because so much of what writing is looking at a question or an idea or whatever world that kicks off the thing. You're outside trying to understand it and see it. Like you don't control it. You're not the center of it. You are literally unpacking it. And so I also feel like early success may change some of that, right? Like if you suddenly think like, oh, I'm a writer, that's the sort of the death knell of being a good writer.
Yeah, a lot of it comes from that insecurity and the imposter syndrome that we all have, and the way we look at things. But
and if you're going to spend 18 months to 2 years in an idea, or like when you write, do you start with a question or a scenario or a character? Like what's the thing that, like, and I know it's probably different every book, but like where does that come from for you?
It's the same every book, and I always start with a premise. So kind of like a scenario, kind of a, there'll be something I hear in the media, or a story a friend will tell me, or something I read about. And there's just those things in life where you go, oh my God, like I need to know more about that. I want to like dig into that. And I want to hear what really, you'll see something on the news and you're like, yeah, but what were they feeling? And what was, all the stuff and it's just like this little tingle I get that where if it's something that I want to know more about, I think hopefully readers would want to know more about. So then I just, dive in and create a fictional background for these scenarios, right? Like, I've done couple swapping gone wrong. I've done a sugar daddy, sugar baby that ends in murder. So I take scenarios and go, how can they go so bad? Yeah. And it's a lot of fun.
I always, I tell people, like, you don't come on this show and I don't ask you like what characters you or like what, and none of that. I'm like, none of it's any of us. Like, writing, I think, comes from what you just said, which is, this is interesting. I would like to spend time in there and like just see what this thing is. And like, so it's all from us and it's none of us, but like, there's no character that's you. There's no anything that you, it really is just like our weird imagination. Right. Like, the fuck is this all about?
Yeah. People always ask me that, like, are your characters real? Is one of them you? And I'm like, oh my God.
No.
So yeah, I just like, who do I want to drag this mess I've created? And then I create the characters. And I know I'd give them a backstory. I always write a little profile, which is another screenwriting tip, right? Yeah. Because in screenwriting, you don't have access to their thoughts and what's in their head. It's all showing, no telling. So I always do that kind of profile. And then I know them really well. And I know how they're going to react when they get into this kind of mess.
Whatever you put them through.
Yeah, exactly. As I drag them through it, I know they're not going to make the right choices. And I know why, right?
This is fascinating. I was just interviewing somebody the other day and I told her, when I was in school, when they were teaching writing, you would do all that stuff as a fiction writer. I mean, I'm a nonfiction writer, but like I sat through the classes where like you wrote scenarios of all your characters. Like, what were they like on their 5th birthday? Like, what was their worst moment? And before you ever wrote anything, you would write all of that stuff. And I was telling her, like, I don't know if writers do that today, but that's, I think, why you write your first book 6 times, because you have to know these people in the world before you understand what they're going to do.
Yeah. And I didn't do the classes, but I, read so many screenwriting books and books on story. And that's just super helpful. Like, before I get going, I just, picked all the characters and like maybe not their 5th grade birthday, but always like, what's the relationship with their parents? Right. What do they want? What do they, what do they wish happened in their life? And who did they wish they were? What do they need? All that kind of stuff. Yeah. So, and someone just told me that was super fun. I did a Instagram thing and they said, give them a zodiac sign and they said, basically, you don't even need to write a character, just give them the traits. Like, oh my God, she's such a Virgo. Like, they had me go through this book, Perfect Family, and give everybody an astrological sign. And they were like, you nailed it. And I'm like, oh, Viv, such a Virgo. And the different, funny. Oh, well, he's sensitive.
Well, like, I didn't, my training, I mean, I went to graduate school for journalism, but I don't have any like structural training. I didn't do an MFA or any of that stuff, but I grew up in an oral culture. Like, I grew up in a very small Appalachian town with, 4,000 or 5,000 people, where literally I learned to tell stories around a campfire, like listening to people. And I think that campfire storytelling is not that different from screenwriting. And it's like, you look at 3 minutes, if you haven't given people the inciting incident, they are done with your story, right? Like, if there's not a car chase in the first minute, they don't care what else you're doing, right? So there becomes these demonstrative beats that have to happen, and you can see when you're losing them. And so when I watch movies, a lot of times I'm like, oh yeah, I know what this. I didn't know the term inciting incident till I was in my 30s, but I knew what it was when I was a kid.
Right. Interesting, isn't it? Yeah, that's exactly what they say, that it's so inherent in us.
I think if you grow up with people that tell stories, like I don't know if everybody has that, but like, if you grow up and stories are part of your life, you do sort of, that becomes a thing that's hard to describe when somebody's like, well, how do you tell a story? I'm like, how do you not?
Right. I know. And I was one of those weird little kids who like narrated everything I did in my head.
Oh my God. I do that to this day. drives my girlfriend insane. She's like, you don't have to say everything you're doing. And I'm like, I kind of do.
I did it in my head at least, so as not to be so annoying.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like Robyn walked down the dark road, the trees were bristling in the wind and all, and I would like do all these like, oh yeah. So I've always been doing it, so like since I was a little kid, and then putting it out on paper felt pretty natural.
Yeah. I will just say, I've been doing this version of the show for 7 years, and I've been doing it since 2000. We're all like this. I've heard some version of that story from a lot of people.
Oh, hilarious.
Yeah. It's like, but you can't say that in a proper crowd because you don't want people to be like, you do what, weirdo? Like nothing. Yeah. There's no voices here.
Narcissist, narrating your interesting life.
It's weird, isn't it? Because to be a writer, you both have to be this sort of weird outsider who doesn't fit in, but also a narcissist enough to believe that like the thing that you have to say. So there's this weird self-hatred, but also self-love that's going on in our head at all times.
That's so funny.
So The Perfect Family is out. You said it just came out, right? Like it just
came
hit.
out last Tuesday. So it's just been out a week and a day.
Oh, man. So is this the first one in the pandemic for you?
Second. So I've had a book a year come out. So it was interesting. My novel, The Couple Swap Gone Wrong, came out.
Did they ever go right?
Yeah, I know. I was like, I actually know people in these kind of open relationships and stuff. And that's what made me think they seem to be working for some people, but I was like, oh, I can make this go very wrong.
It's very easy to see all the ways this is not going to go well.
It goes super, super wrong, like murderously wrong. But so that one came out in last July.
Oh God, so right smack in the middle of everything.
Right. And kind of in the scary, I don't know what it was like where you were, but here, like we were still pretty like, can we even walk by someone, like it was really like, you just really didn't know. Right. Yeah. Like, so anyway, and also, things were not quite up and running like they are now. Like everyone was so comfortable online. And so like, they know how long everything is and they're getting it going. And so we were just kind of starting doing things. And I did all these Instagram lives and they were all an hour. And by the end of the hour, you're just like, oh yeah. Anyway, like, it's so draining. And now everybody's like, Instagram lives are half an hour, like 1 year later. Everyone's like, this is how we do it. This is what the dates, and everybody's so organized. But the first book in the pandemic was a bit of a different experience.
Yeah. It's so, and it's, I don't know if this is good for the business or not, right? Like, I kind of feel like it is, because there's this escapism and this, like, I feel like people are reading more than they maybe normally do. But also it's sort of weird, like not to be able to go to the bookstore. Like, I don't know if you feel this way, but for me, when you finish a book, it's obviously done a year before you do anything with it. But there's something about being able to point to it in a bookstore when people are like, is it done? You're like, yes, there, go away. Like right there. Like you know what I mean? Like the project is like, it's a way for you to have closure to the external world.
Right. Like, I don't know if I ever saw The Swap. Well, I mean, now it's still in bookstores, but I don't know if I even saw it because it didn't make it into bookstores here. Also, there was distribution issues, like crazy because of the border in Canada. Like all our books come from a warehouse in New Jersey.
Sorry about that. I apologize for America for our dumbass nature.
No, but the border, like we couldn't get books over the border. So it was really, really amazing. The Swap debuted at #1 in Canada because so many people pre-ordered it, because I was like, we just spread the word, and
that's fantastic.
It was fantastic. And and it was all people making that effort to order it online because you couldn't go anywhere, right? Yeah. So, and it didn't even make it into bookstores in Canada until 2 weeks after pub date. So it kind of never got its feature on the shelf because you're on to the next thing by then, right?
But what a surreal experience to have the #1 book, but also like, it's not in bookstores.
Yeah, I know. It was so weird. And it was only 1 week, but because it was not in bookstores.
Yeah. Hey, we don't do math. 1 week, 10 weeks, it was still number one.
I know, it was great. It was really, really great. And
so after you go from Wife Swap, or not Wife Swap, that's a TV show, from the Couple Swap, give me what's the short elevator pitch on The Perfect Family?
Okay, so The Perfect Family is, spoiler, they're not perfect. They have great jobs. Mom and dad have great jobs. They have a beautifully restored home. Their son is at a prestigious college. Daughter's doing well in high school.
I already hate them.
Seemingly out of the blue, they start to get attacked in the night by vandals. So there's like eggs thrown at their house, and then their tires are slashed, and it escalates and escalates, and it gets very violent and very dangerous. And no one in the family will admit to any knowledge of why this could be happening, but each member of the family has a really, really dark secret that could be causing these assaults.
And that's what we're going to find out as we go.
And then you find out at the end who it's a convoluted, twisty path. But
I hope so.
Yeah, you would hope so.
I don't know at the end of the first chapter, like, oh yeah.
Oh yeah, it's him. Yeah. No, their secrets are all, and they're all kind of like manifestations of this, trying to be so perfect and putting all the pressure on yourself, and everybody's cracking, and they're not connecting, and they're not talking, and they're all so worried about their own reputation and their marriage and their parents getting mad that it's one big mess.
It's funny, like, when I was younger and I would watch things like, you watch movies where this would happen, or like rom-coms where like, why won't he just tell her that he loves her? And like, as a kid, you're like, this is stupid. And now I'm an adult and I'm like, oh shit, all that sounds like my family.
Yeah, I know. It's true.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's a thriller. That feels like, suburban life.
Yeah, it's true. Like, let's just like get so super angry and not say anything, just
right, and act like nothing's wrong. Meanwhile, you're like, the whole house is falling down, and people are like, nope, it's good, we're good. Well, this has been lovely. Thank you so much for taking a few minutes to talk with me. I always love the Canadian thriller writers. You guys are like, I feel like I need to get up there when all this is over and just have a big party where I can meet all of you at one time.
Yes, how fun would that be?
I know, right? Like someday when there's no, hopefully, I think that'll happen again someday.
Yes, it'll happen. We'll get there. We'll get there.
This is available like all over the place. Yeah, right? Amazon, Bookshop, like all the places where people buy books.
Should be everywhere, hopefully. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, it was very lovely to talk to you, and I hope we can do this again soon.
Thanks so much, Brad. Nice to meet you. Thanks for having me.
Well, there you have it. That was Robyn Harding. Her book, The Perfect Family, is out right now. Hope you liked what you heard. If you did, a couple reminders. Do those two things that we ask you to do at the top of this show. First, tell your friends about us. Most important thing you can do for us, help us spread the word, help us grow the program, and leave us a review either through Apple Podcasts or at the Facebook page. While you're at that, don't forget, check out all of the other programs on the Solid Listen Podcast Network, including the flagship Mother Mass Sleep with podcast with host and our Solid Listen podcast queen, Molly McAleer. Don't forget, these video podcasts come out about every Monday and Friday. You can always find them on the Solid Listen Network YouTube channel. You can catch them at thewritersjam.com, or you can get the audio version wherever you listen to podcasts. Speaking of, the Jam comes out every Wednesday, so get yourself subscribed right now and never miss anything that we do here in the bunker. And remember, you can always catch us and me on Twitter and Instagram at The Writers Jam. Until the next time, I will see you around the internet.